Hi, this is Michaela with Honest Talk Radio. Honest Talk Radio is a space where we will be sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly in real, raw conversations to try and do our part to reduce the amount of shame, guilt, and judgment so many of us women face. Our hope is that through these conversations, you will feel supported and encouraged in every aspect of your life. So let's get started. This episode of Honest Talk Radio is brought to you by Swadu Swaddle by Good Catch, a family company launched in 2017. They are the leading in technology of fuss-free, easy-to-use, silent swaddles that are also hip-healthy and supports babies' cognitive and emotional development. To find out more about Swadu, go to www.swado.co. Welcome to this week's episode of Honest Talk Radio. I'm your host, Michaela, and we'll be kicking off the month of April with the topic passion. Now, passion can have many different meanings, but for the purpose of this week's podcast, we're going to be talking about passion meeting purpose. Although we are always in a state of transition, our life's true purpose doesn't really change. I love this quote by Richard Karlgaard, an American journalist. He says, "Purpose is a soft virtue, but it's what gives you steel in your spine." Listen, ladies, passions can come and go depending on your current circumstances. One minute you might be super passionate about breastfeeding because you're in the middle of it and you're doing it every single day. But then maybe when you're done breastfeeding, that might not be what you're passionate about. It might not. I want you to really examine the themes in your life that stir the deepest parts of your heart. For example, the deepest desire of my heart is to help women own their own power. And I do this by teaching childbirth education classes, by hosting an annual women's conference that is a place for women to be lifted up, encouraged, and supported. I have conversations with women every single day that are real, raw, and encouraging, and I open the door in a community for them to do that for others. So that's why I'm super excited about today's guest, Jason Martin. He is a master at helping people walk through their passions in life to truly discover their purpose and how they can best fit that into their careers. So without further ado, let's welcome Jason Martin to the show. Welcome, Jason. I'm so excited to have you on the show today. And as the month of April continues, we are talking about passion. That is the topic for this month, and you fit so well into that topic. So thank you for taking the time out to record with me today.
Thank you, Michaela. I would not miss it. Absolutely. I'm very passionate about your work as well. So it should be fun to see where this goes.
Absolutely. All right. So tell our listeners a little bit about your story and how you got to where you are today.
Absolutely. So most recently, a little over a year ago, I came out of 30 years of corporate work in employee and leadership development and executive development. And over that time period, I've seen obviously a lot of the same things happen over and over and over again, and realized that there's a lot of value that I can bring to people to maybe shorten their journey and arrive at where the place they would really like to be, as opposed to maybe where they are right now. And so I thought, well, let me create some programs for that to help people with that. And then also I have a couple other passion projects that I'm sure we'll talk about along here as well. But my passion is really for connecting with people, creating those relationships, helping them see a future for themselves that maybe they're not giving themselves permission to fully enjoy or pursue.
So you said something about maybe shortening their course to meeting their passions or their purpose in life. Elaborate on that a little bit.
Sure. Well, with the example of leaders, for instance, and then I'll go back to everybody else. The average age when most people in the civilian work market get their first exposure to any kind of leadership development, in other words, how do I really do this, is the age of 42, yet they have their first leadership position in their late 20s often. So we've got this long period in there where everybody's working for amateurs. And that's just not a good scene.
It's like the blind leading the blind.
Right. So on the one hand, I want to help those leaders, and I'm working on that as well. But I also want to empower people who I know are going to be working for unprepared leaders to own their own career, to own their own engagement, and empower themselves. And I have a particular passion for helping women in this regard, partly because I was raised by amazing women, and I'm very connected, I feel, with women. But also because from a practical standpoint, every single metric in an organization, everything that they measure that matters, gets better when you have more women in leadership roles.
Wow, do you guys hear that, ladies? It gets better with more women in leaderships. I mean, I could have told you that, Jason, but I'm so glad you've seen it.
I'm sure you could.
I always say if a woman was leading the Air Force, that, things would run smoother, because, nobody can multitask, but we like to think we can.
Well, you're very good at task switching.
Yeah.
You can do that really fast. It can look like the same thing.
So you've created a Ready for Anything course. And I'm super excited about that, because that's something I wish I had years ago, when I was trying to find myself in life and figure out what it was that I wanted to be when I grew up. So can you tell me a little bit more about your Ready for Anything course?
Sure. The Ready for Anything course is a mix of the, kind of the personal work that we need to do to figure out exactly who we are and how we add value. And it's not always in the ways that we think we do. I'm a big maximizer. I want to go after the maximum value that somebody provides or could provide. And that usually is in the area where you have some interest to begin with. That's what gives you the staying power to get really good at something, is that there's something about it that intrigues you. So we go into that, we explore that. I'm also a Gallup certified strengths coach, but I wanted to give people a way to identify what those passion areas are without having to take an assessment. So I give them some exercises so that you can figure that out in a very pragmatic way. And it's super easy to measure. It's based on how much do you like it and how good are you at it. And then there's exercises and templates that they fill out on their own and go through that. There's also other pragmatic things around there for how do you align yourself with an organization? How do you align yourself with a team? It's one thing to kind of admire an organization, but getting inside and aligning with them, that requires you to actually do some things. And so I provide people with that. And then we also talk about how do you contribute what you have to give in a way that's going to be meaningful to others. So it's not just about being fully self-expressed and turned up loud. That's fabulous, but it's got to be meaningful to other people. So you need to contribute mindfully. And then the fourth thing that we focus on is what I call exploring the edges. In other words, we all have limits to what we know, what we can do, what our networks are, just all the different aspects that go into being effective in a career. And we often have these boundaries that we don't move beyond. And so I'm not asking people to take, these huge, giant leaps, like if you were going to a motivational weekend or something like that. I've seen those fail over and over and over again because they're just not sustainable. So we talk about how do you expand those parameters slowly and gradually, but meaningfully and in a balanced way as well. So we're looking at really those four areas. How do you produce your best work? How do you align with an organization? How do you contribute mindfully? And how do you explore your edges and expand your edges so that you're always growing and you'll always have opportunities regardless of what happens where you are right now. Or if you're not working right now and you want to either go into an organization or start something of your own. All of these things still apply.
Yeah, it's, as we say on Honest Talk all the time, it's about moments of transition, which we're constantly in. We're constantly moving from one, I won't even say phase, because you can go back in, go out, and it's, moving in all different directions. And that's something that, you and I have talked a lot about, is that transition, those transitions that we face on a daily basis. I love exploring the edges, because let's talk about that a little bit more. We as humans get very complacent and comfortable, but that doesn't mean we're happy or we are using our skills and our strengths to better ourselves or to impact others. So let's sit there and exploring the edges a little more.
Sure. So let me talk about, I'm going to start with what it isn't.
Okay.
What it isn't is having 10 different feeds of information that you look at every day compulsively. That's not exploring the edges. That's overloading your brain with crap, for the most part, that you'll never, ever use. So I sometimes recommend people go on a feed diet, or and not just social media, but just feeds in general. And ask yourself the question, what have I learned from this person that I'm actually using? Like a year later, I'm still using that because it was so valuable. That's somebody who's worth investing some time in, because they have something to offer you. But if it's just something that, that was a nice little, endorphin hit or something, it may not help you change your circumstances. It may be actually reinforcing the situation that you're in currently. So exploring the edges is taking those things that you're doing now, or taking these areas where you have expertise, and going, what would it look like to be a little bit better at this? Is there a course that I could take? Is there a meetup group that I could go ask some people who are already good at this? Maybe I go to something that I have no experience in, but I go to their meetup group to learn about it, because I think it might be interesting to me. And I really advise this kind of thing for people who are considering starting their own businesses. Go find out what a day in the life is really like before you create a website, buy a domain, get a LLC or whatever. Figure out what a day in the life is really like. And here's a great tip for that as well. That is, if you are already doing the essential tasks of that existence in some way in your life, it might be a good way for you to go. But if the central aspects of what makes somebody successful in those roles is not currently part of your life on any level, in any way, it's going to be a hard slog, and you need to be prepared for that. It could be stuff that you're doing in a volunteer basis. Could be something that you're doing at your church. It could be something that you're doing as a part-time kind of thing. But there should be something that's already being expressed in your life, and probably has been for a while. That's really good information for identifying what those passion areas are. It's the stuff that you do when maybe you don't really even have the time, but you make the time for it, or you really want to make the time for it. And I lost my train of thought there for a second. But anyway, you get where I'm going with that?
I get where you're going with it. I do the same thing. It's called Honest Talk Radio for a reason. I totally get where you're going with that, because even in my own life, it has been, creating Honest Talk International with Crystal and Honest Birth Talk. It came out of stuff that we were already doing, but not really realizing we were doing it, and then taking it to a larger scale. And really it comes down to what was waking me up in the morning. And some of the stuff I thought I was doing, for example, just teaching childbirth classes, I just did it, but it was how I felt after the fact. I was energized. I was excited. I was motivated to research for the next class and to, come up with a plan. And it actually took someone else, my husband, pointing it out, saying, wow, your face lights up after you're done teaching. You are excited. I can hear the passion come out in your voice. And I never looked at it that way. I just looked at it as something that I was doing because it fit into my schedule.
Yep.
With moving and everything like that. Can you give us an example from your life where you had to explore the edges and
Sure. So I, as I said, spent a lot of time in corporate around training and development at all different levels. But I wanted to broaden that. And one of the areas that we talk about in the program for broadening is your network. And a great way to do that is to volunteer in an organization that you have some interest in. And professional organizations, as an example, are really effective ways to build your network with people that you already have something in common with. So I joined what's called the Organizational Development Network. And very quickly there was an opening to be the president of that organization, and I accepted that role. And it was stuff that I absolutely loved to do. And it added to my time burden. There was stuff that I had to do to fulfill that role. But some of those relationships are still incredibly important to me today. Some of them are people I consider to be my best friends, and they're people that I can go to who understand me and understand my field, the area that I like to work in, and have something to offer that's very specific. Because sometimes our family and friends can be great supporters, they can be great cheerleaders, but they don't really know what you're talking about.
Right. Yep. That is absolutely true. Like, they want to be your number one fan, but when you're hosting a conversation with them about specifics, you get the blank stares, or they're just ready to move on to another topic of conversation because they don't get it.
Right. And that, if I can just lead into that idea of a cheerleader, that's somebody who can provide you support. Another role is, our sources of inspiration, the people that we go to kind of fill us up. But where a lot of people get confused is they mistake a source of inspiration for a role model.
Yeah.
A source of inspiration can be somebody that you will never, ever in your life be anything like. Your life may never be like theirs. Okay. So Nelson Mandela, whoever, can be a great source of inspiration for you. Doesn't mean you're going to go live in a prison to, have that experience or, completely change the politics of a country. Role models are people who are doing what you want to do.
Yeah. Influencers.
Practical experience.
Right. So I had mentioned earlier about not knowing what I wanted to be when I grew up. What kind of questions can our listeners ask themselves when they're trying to make that decision? A lot of our listeners are maybe they're new moms, or they've been a mom and now they're deciding, they're still moms, but they're deciding that they want to do something else outside of the home, or a variety of different, maybe they worked out of the home and they're ready to become a stay-at-home wife or mom. So what are some questions they should be asking themselves?
Sure. So, we've talked a lot about passion. Clearly, the things that you have a lot of passion around are very important. And when you, especially moms, you're already playing multiple roles, and you may be passionate about all of them. So the challenge becomes, how do I balance these passions? And I think the biggest thing that I've seen happen, and that distracts women in that position in particular from moving in the direction that they want to go, is they're really, really horrible at asking for stuff for themselves.
Yes. Guilty.
including time.
Yeah.
Making a case for why it's important, giving people an easy way to help them by telling them what they need, not making them bad in the process, not turning it into I'm a victim, because that's not a great way to sell anything. But this is what I see as the benefit in me having the time to do this and look at this, consider this, develop this skill.
When we turn the conversation as to what our skills and how, if we spend some time doing X, Y, and Z, it can in turn help the family. It can help my friends or the people around me, or my children. The big thing is, if my children see that I'm working hard and I don't give up and I'm, pursuing my dreams, then hopefully it will rub off on them. And so whenever we do anything for ourselves, we have to figure out, we don't have to, but that's it, by nature, we try and figure out, well, how is it going to benefit other people? Because heaven forbid it just benefit you.
and that is a tricky line of thinking, because if you have to justify it that way, you're having to justify yourself all the time. You're having to justify who you are, which to me is unfortunate. I mean, I do it too. So I'm not immune. Awareness is not immunity. But if, again, you can phrase it as, this is what I really want to accomplish here. This is the goal I've set for myself, and this is how I think I can get there, and this is how you can help me get there. Can I count on your help?
Yeah, I like that. You had mentioned earlier when we were talking about the Ready for Anything course that it's different than the normal self-assessments, that it's not really a self-assessment survey. Because, I've taken those color, what color are you? What animal are you? And honestly, they're good. They're very good at, giving me a time and a purpose to self-reflect. But I often get really confused with all that information. I'm like, okay, so it says I'm gold, but what does that really mean? And how do I apply it?
Right.
So how are you different?
I love self-assessments. I've done a whole bunch of them, and I'm a certified master in the Gallup instrument. But I have seen them become that huge source of confusion and distraction, and just another way to pigeonhole yourself. So I think those instruments are great if you're somebody whose mind kind of works that way, and you can understand the nuances and go, well, this works for me, this part doesn't work for me, and just move forward. But it's no good if it's just going to, sit on the shelf and you're not going to really do anything. I'm all about, what can you do differently today?
Yeah.
What can I share with you that you can actually point to it, go back to a point to it and go, you know what? I changed something that I'm doing. And it was achievable. It wasn't overwhelming. And it's something that I could see myself maintaining. That's my goal in anything I develop. I call myself a tool maker. My goal is not, I absorb the huge body of work so that I can create tools for people who don't then have to do the same thing I did. Well, what's the point in all of us doing that?
Right. Yeah. Why reinvent the wheel? You and I have talked a lot in previous conversations about the strength finder. Finding, when you draw on your strengths and you find out what your strengths are, you can match those with your purpose. And that works, I think, both at home as well as at work, and outsourcing for those things that you're not strong at and not feeling guilty over it. So as you know, many women and moms especially, we have that level of guilt that is unmatchable to anything else. So what would you say to those listeners that are feeling stuck or feeling guilty when they're they feel that hole, like they want to do or be something else, but don't want to take away again, like from their, role as a mom or a spouse or.
Sure. There's a couple of really basic things. I mean, you hear people talking about it all the time. Journaling. Journaling is a great way to kind of just process and get stuff out. Anything that you can do around mindfulness is going to help you notice your thoughts without A, judging them, and B, letting them carry you down rabbit trails. And because it's very easy to get into a self-recrimination loop, a self-criticism loop, and that's just not helpful. I like to think of how our brains work as like computer programs and subroutines. So the brain's ultimate goal is to operate efficiently because it only has so much to work with.
Right.
And so if it can run a subroutine based on a trigger, based on an event in your life, that's what it's going to do. And if that subroutine one is, for instance, the guilt routine, your brain is going to find more and more opportunities to use that subroutine.
So it's a
Gonna say,
mindset.
oh, wow, you're only feeling guilty about 1,000 things. I bet we could do 2,000.
I bet we could.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just the machine. It's just how the machine works. That's all. It's not a personality trait. It's not a flaw. It's just the machine at work. And so things like mindfulness and meditation and journaling help reprogram the machine.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that's something I've been implementing in my life a lot the last couple of months, is spending time. It's funny because talking about guilt, I used to feel so guilty taking those 10 minutes to journal when I should have been, getting my daughter's lunch ready for school, or doing this or doing that, or the laundry needs to be put in, or whatever. I could find anything to feel guilty about. But taking those 10 minutes, 15 minutes to reflect and journal and just brain dump, if you will, has actually improved my output in the house.
Sure.
And work, as well as when I'm doing something for my children or for my husband, I'm more focused on that task instead of the feeling like I, have the 100 list to-dos in my head going on at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad you said the 10 minutes. People hear the word meditation, they go, oh my God, that's a wasted hour. But but who has an hour, first of all? And 10 minutes is plenty. I say you can do it for a minute. You can squeeze in a minute of mindful breathing. You will notice a difference at the end of that minute in terms of how you feel and how you focus.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about, I know you're a published author. You've written a few books. So tell us about some of the books that you've written.
The main book that's out there on Amazon right now is called Never Trust a Happy Dinosaur. And that's based
I love that title.
on my many years in corporate and noticing that there were different ways of getting in the way. And some people are more prone to some of those ways than others. And so I wanted to have a little fun with it because it's kind of a little bit of a serious topic, people becoming workplace dinosaurs and obstacles. So I made it funny. There's 9 dinosaur archetypes that I described, or dinotypes would be another way to look at it. And I gave them funny names like Obstructodon. I don't even need to describe it for you to have a pretty good idea what Obstructodon is all about.
Right.
But I do go into what they tend to do and a little bit on how to cope with that kind of person, and also what to do if you feel like you're becoming an Obstructodon. So there are 8 other variations of those dinosaurs, and they're also ranked from mostly harmless to actively hostile. So you have some idea of what your risk level is, because the reality is, we got a lot of people mixing together in the workplace, and not everybody's in a great space. Not everybody got great training and development. Not everybody thinks very highly of themselves. And there's a lot of things that get in the way of people getting along, which is one of my central areas of interest, is how can I help people get along? So it was a way to kind of lay all this out in a way that's actually helpful, and also accurate, and entertaining at the same time.
Well, and let's face it, those dynamics don't only take place in the workplace. They can be,
Sure.
In friendship circles, volunteer, experiences, or even in the home life. You might, be experiencing some of those characteristics. And that's something that really resonated with me when we've talked in the past, is that what you teach about the workplace, or the knowledge that you draw on from your experience in corporate America for so long, really does come out to play in all aspects of life, not just the workplace.
Yeah, great point, Michaela. I've talked to people in lower education, higher education, military, government service, you name it. It's because it's a group of people. That's it. Anytime you get a group of people working together, these are the things that happen.
And I see those dynamics happening a lot in moms groups. You join a mom group thinking that you're joining somewhere, a place to share and get, draw on each other's experiences. And then it turns into a competition of sorts, or a one-up, you're trying to one-up somebody, or you're comparing yourself against somebody else. And that's why I think it resonates with our audience, which brings me to the next thing that you're doing. And you're currently, you guys can't see this because this is audio only, but Jason is sitting in his car while we're hosting this interview because he's on the Hidden Leader Expedition. Tell us a little more about that.
I am. So one of my other observations with all those years working was that a lot of attention gets paid to the people at the top, the CEOs, the presidents, especially the celebrity CEOs, the Elon Musk and people like that. And, I have nothing bad to say about those people. They need to do what they're doing. They need to have the vision. They need to tell a good story. They need to work with investors. There's a lot of demands on those people, and I love working with them as well. But what I noticed was most of what I call the leadering doesn't happen with them. Most of that happens elsewhere with other people who are actually helping people make these visions come into reality. And sometimes it's somebody who's in a lower level position, so to speak, in a large organization, but often it's people at the top of smaller organizations. But they're the people who will never have a book deal, probably don't want one, not interested in the limelight necessarily. But they are having a daily positive effect on the people that they lead. So the Hidden Leader Expedition is designed to uncover a lot of these hidden people leaders, hidden thought leaders, and hidden developers of leaders to see what's working at work. I mean, in the real level of work, what's working at work to help people be productive, help them focus on their passions, help them develop themselves and own their own careers. What is it that those people are doing that we can all relate to? Because again, I love these very inspirational figures, and there's a couple that I follow, but I'm not going to be them. I'm never going to be those people. Right. And most of the people that I work with, they're never going to be those people. There's so many things about them that are unique and special and different, that it's often not relatable, even though it's inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the what's working at work, because when you figure out what is working and what isn't working, then you can design it around a way to make that way the employees are happy. Therefore, the leaders are happy because the employees are doing the work that needs to get done. And overall, everybody is no longer going to just a job, but instead feeling like they have a purpose, and want to work harder because of it. And you and I have talked a lot about that, the feeling of purpose when it comes to the workplace.
Yeah, your purpose is what keeps you going when things get tough, and you remind yourself of why you're doing this. Because I don't care, for most of us, including myself, even though we may have a strong driving purpose, there are times when it's tempting to really, this is what I want to do. This is hard.
Yes, absolutely.
And you start adding up all the ways we're self-criticizing about all the things we could have done better, but it's worth it. I mean, this is what we're kind of here to do. And the other thing that I want to add on this, I was talking to somebody the other night, and purpose is certainly something that we feel, but to a certain extent, purpose is also something we create. We are some people would say infinite beings, meaning that the basic hardware and wetware is capable of doing all sorts of different things that you could choose to do, and build a purpose around. So especially for those people that have multiple interests, it's kind of sometimes about picking something to be purposeful about.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you can get overwhelmed with the multiple interests and then never do anything.
Yeah. And it's actually a trick of your subconscious to keep you from doing anything. It likes the status quo, even if it's unpleasant. It knows it.
Right. And that goes back to when I was asking you about if somebody is feeling stuck, where do they start? And that's what this Ready for Anything program really helps people uncover, is
Yes.
because, again, we're constantly moving in and out of seasons.
Yep.
Whether it be with our children, with our relationships, with our career, or whatever, we're moving in and out. And so the Ready for Anything course helps you move through those seasons with confidence and not feel like you run into a brick wall every time the wind changes.
Right. Exactly. So that's well put. Yeah, and it's very mindfully designed to limit the stress on that part of your subconscious that wants to maintain the status quo. It's designed to take little steps that it's also called norm engineering. You're re-engineering what's normal for you in a way that should eliminate some of that pushback, or in the case of big motivational events, what I call snapback, where not only do we not do that, we do the bad stuff more.
Right. Yeah. So Jason, you're a father. What do you tell your kids when they, maybe they come to you with, I'm not sure if I should go, I know your daughter, Maddie, has a passion for singing and entertaining. And I'm sure she's hit moments of, oh my gosh, why am I doing this? It's so hard. Sure. So what are some words of wisdom that you give her in those moments?
I'll get to that in a second, but I want to back it up and say that the example that you provide is the most essential thing. The example that the person you are when they are young.
Yeah.
I have always been focused on maximizing my contribution to the world. Sometimes I did it well, sometimes I did it poorly, but I've always been focused on that, even when it inconvenienced my family.
Yeah.
Because I recognized that my example was more important than anything else. Another little thing I did with my kids, kids like to do stuff that might put them in some kind of danger, some kind of harm's way. A stupid example, there's a seawall next to the harbor in San Diego, and they wanted to walk on it. It's really tempting to go, get down from there, you're going to fall.
Right.
Because that comes from a place of fear. And so when they were really small, I would say, well, if you want to do that, let me hold your hand. It can be a little dangerous. It's like, okay, I think your balance is pretty good. Just keep your eye on what you're doing. Don't get distracted. You can do this. So it was all about building their confidence as opposed to giving them this elevated sense of risk.
Right.
And because there's enough real risk without exaggerating it. And now, however, I don't really even have to help her that much. But it's more of acknowledging what she's already done.
And helping her remember
yes,
that.
Right. And expressing complete confidence in her ability without being Pollyanna about it. I'm very upfront about, this part sucks. Make no mistake. This road is not easy. What you are trying to do. You're up for it. You can do it. But it's not going to be easy.
Well, yeah, I think in our society,
that combination of confidence, real confidence, and reality.
Yeah.
Not trying to sugarcoat.
Yeah, because in our society, especially in the millennial generation, they're taught you can do anything. But, it's really like you said, modeling the behaviors, modeling the confidence, that goes a lot farther than telling your kids you can do anything.
Right. Yeah, you can do anything that you have talent for and you put the effort into. Yes. But if you don't have the talent for it, you don't have the attributes for it, no, you can't. You're never going to be world class at that. That's not going to happen. I'm sorry. Go have fun with it if it's something you like to do. But just know that that's what it is. It's an avocation. It's a hobby. It's a great place to express yourself. But it's not a place to build a career.
Right. Well, we've talked before about how in this day and age, people aren't staying in one job for years upon, 30 years, 40 years. They're going from one thing to the next to the next. And so I think the Ready for Anything, I keep talking about it because I think it's just something that's so powerful when you're really trying to get unstuck and figure out what you want out of life so that you can be the best version of you in all transition and all aspects.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And that it's designed, you could go through the program, the 12-week program now, and then a couple of years from now, when you're looking at another transition, revisit it.
Yeah.
Go through and say, are these things still true for me? Because some of your commitments may have changed, or you may have developed some new interests, or you explored an interest you had to the point where you realize, you know what, I'm really not that interested in that.
Right.
I've explored it. Now I know it better. It's going, no, that's really not a good place for me. And so you want to drop that piece and look at something else.
I love that. So as we're wrapping up this interview, do you have any last words of wisdom you'd like to give our listeners?
Sure. I would want to encourage, especially your audience, don't be the person that underestimates you.
Wow. Yeah, let that sink in for a minute. That's powerful.
Do whatever you have to not be that person any more than you absolutely have to,
Yeah, we are our own worst enemies most of the time. And we put that ceiling over our heads. So yeah, I love that. I'm going to chew on that for the rest of the day.
Good. I've succeeded then.
Absolutely. So Jason, where can our listeners find you on social media and your website, and how can we stay up to date on your adventures during the Hidden Leader Expedition?
Sure. Jason Martin Presents is pretty much the handle for everything. So Jason Martin Presents on Instagram, Facebook, and jasonmartinpresents.com. You can follow us in all those areas. Follow me in all those areas. There you can on Jason Martin Presents, you can subscribe, and subscribers will get some of the content sooner than other people, and there may be some exclusive content for the subscribers too. And route updates and those kinds of things.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I'm excited to hear about all your adventures, and I look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Thank you very much, Michaela. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to today's show. If you'd like to come on the show and have an honest conversation about connecting, relating, and encouraging women, contact us at hello@honesttalkinternational.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so that you can be in tune with all the great happenings. Have a great day.